Welcome, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth, and anything and everything in between to another episode of Disguised Coverage, part of the Cover One Sports Network. I am your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2 underscores ANT. Give me a follow on the old Twitter, or if follows aren't your thing, I'll gladly take the deed to your house, or a blood oath pledging your undying allegiance to me, or a bag of adamantium, or a bag of vibranium, or a temp pad that gives me access to the TVA. I'm pretty agreeable to most things and pretty easygoing. So, whatever fits your fancy. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Disguised Coverage. While you're here, please rate and review and subscribe. I know it seems small, but the little things like the likes and the reviews and the subscriptions are tremendously important to myself and the entire team at Cover One. And while speaking about the team at Cover One, and before we get into this episode, I wanted to bring up a cool project that Cover One has going on. You may have seen some things on the old Twitter and on the Cover One channel this past week that Cover One now has a Cover One fantasy football show hosted by myself and Greg Thompson of the Cover One Buffalo podcast, and new member to the Cover One family, Rich Haynes. Find him on Twitter at Burn River Sports. He's a Cleveland guy, but he's good people's. We're tremendously excited to launch this project. We're big into fantasy football. I know so many of you are, whether you enjoy it for the sake of it or you're addicted to it and hate it like myself. It's the bane of my existence, but you can't stop playing it. We're going to be breaking down fantasy football weekly. It's airing live on Mondays, starting now through the summer, and then we're going to reassess what date we go live during the NFL season. And we're tremendously excited to launch it. You're going to get rankings, you're going to get predictions, you're going to get advice, but you're also going to get some pop culture mashups and a different spin and take on things. For example, this past week, Greg made his case of why tight end Robert Tonyan is the 98 degrees of fantasy football tight ends. So fun stuff there. Also, in relation to that, we are tremendously excited at Cover One to announce our partnership with Underdog Fantasy, a tremendous app and site that's great for daily fantasy, weekly pick'ems, player prop parlays, best ball, just a ton of anything and everything regarding to fantasy football to enhance your viewing experience and watching experience of football in general, and just tying more madness into your fantasy life. When you download that app, use the promo code COVER1 and you're going to get $25 in credit if you use that Cover One promo code. That's Cover One, no space in between, just the word cover and then a one right at the end of it, at the end, the number one, and get yourself a free $25 credit when you do that. Oh, and Liam is here. What up, Liam? Member of the team. Appreciate you stopping by, Liam. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we're excited to launch the Cover One Fantasy Show and to have the partnership with Underdog Fantasy. Again, download the app, subscribe, and use that promo code Cover One and get yourself a free $25 credit. Now, for tonight's episode, for this episode of Disguised Coverage, we've got some intriguing things to talk about, as identified by the title of this episode, the Buffalo Bills 2021 most intriguing players. Don't mind me again, the last several episodes, as I dab my eyes, allergies are getting the best of me time and time again, unfortunately. So the theme in this episode, we're going to be going through and taking a look at certain players that are intriguing, obviously, for 2021 in this upcoming season, and what their performance means, both positively or negatively, not just in the vacuum of this 2021 season, but in the scope of going forward, in terms of what they mean for this team going forward and in the future, from a monetary perspective, from a performance perspective, from a roster building perspective, because we have the thoughts in our brain, in our head. We know who the keys to this team are, going forward. We know the easy, not the low-hanging fruit, but more of the low-hanging fruit. We know Josh Allen. We know Stephon Diggs. We know Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, guys like that. But there are some underlying storylines and some important aspects to several Buffalo Bills players. And what they do this year in 2021 will have ramifications farther than just 2021. It's kind of like the Russell Crowe line in Gladiator. What happens in 2021 for these guys that we're going to talk about tonight will echo throughout eternity or in eternity. It's one of those two things. So I'm very excited to break this down and go through things. Without any further ado, we're going to jump right in. And we're going to start with a person who has been very divisive amongst Bills Mafia. I would say at this point, He's probably the most polarizing player on the Buffalo Bills. That player is Tremaine Edmunds. He is my most intriguing player for this upcoming season. He is the player that I am watching the most. Last year at this time, my eyes were all on Josh Allen. I wanted to know what Josh Allen was going to do going into 2020. I was still on the fence as to whether or not he could be the franchise quarterback. I liked him. I thought he showed a lot of promise through 2019, and I thought we had something positive with him. But I still was unsure whether or not he could be the guy that was going to take us into the promised land and go forward. I had questions about certain things mechanically, the mental side of the game, different aspects. I see people coming through in the chat. Appreciate all the highs and hellos. How's everybody doing tonight? Appreciate you guys stopping by and joining me. So that was my guy for last year, Josh Allen. And I don't think that's tremendously, niche or anything like that. I don't think that's a unique take. I think a lot of people had eyes on Josh Allen going into last year and trying to figure out where Josh Allen was going to go in the trajectory of his career. And this year, I have the same thoughts for Tremaine Edmunds. We saw Tremaine Edmunds last year in 2020 have a year that was interesting, to say the least. And I think that year in 2020 is the reason he, in my opinion, again, just from on-field play aspect, I see some of the thoughts coming in about Cole Beasley, but I'm not getting into COVID thoughts and COVID takes. I'm just talking about pure on-the-field performance and aspects. The season that Tremaine Edmunds had last year separated people a little bit. It was a bit divisive. You've got a situation now where people are all basically on the opposite ends and are on both ends of the extreme. You have a lot of people who think he's terrible and not worth the fifth-year extension, and he's been a massive letdown. You've got other people who are giving him a regular pass, considering what he's gone through and considering his age. And I think he's somewhere in between. I just think that his 2020 season, as we discussed on the Mythbusters episode that we did here on Disguise coverage several weeks ago, the 2020 season for Tremaine Edmunds wasn't indicative of the player that he could be or the player that he is. So if you are judging him solely off of 2020, I don't think that's the proper season to judge him off of. You've got a player who had a shoulder injury that was a significant injury. Any type of shoulder injury for any NFL player is going to be a problem, let alone for somebody whose job it is to shed blockers and get his hands on people and make tackles. Having a wounded limb isn't ideal for that. And then you add in the other factors of Star Latulele opting out. You add in Matt Milano being gone and being injured for a majority of the season, someone who has a massive impact on Tremaine. And you start to kind of put things together. That season last year had a lot of variables, and it's not something that we should holistically judge Tremaine Edmunds on. But I think I appreciate you, Paulie, there. Tremaine is a great first choice for this type of discussion. Thank you. I appreciate that. A lot of it comes down to the expectation you set for Tremaine Edmunds when he was initially drafted. He gets taken in the first round. The Bills trade up for him. He's drafted, as we spoke about this on the Mythbusters episode, he's taken into a team led by Sean McDermott. And the initial immediate thoughts are, oh my goodness, Luke Kuechly. Oh my goodness, Thomas Davis, Shaq Thompson, even going back to the Philadelphia days, oh my goodness, Jeremiah Trotter, all these types of things. And you combine that with his measurables and his age. Again, now he just turned 23 on May 2nd. He's younger than a lot of the prospects that came out in the 2021 draft that were just drafted a couple months ago. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. He's got an 83-inch wingspan. He runs a 4.5 40. He's a physical monster and a freak. And I think a lot of people saw that and saw the potential and saw the hope and knew he was going to a Sean McDermott team and saw the track record with former players and the expectations, and the bar got set very, very high, which is fair. I'm not saying you shouldn't set the bar high and shouldn't have high expectations for any player, but Tremaine's 2020 was not holistically indicative of who he could be. We showed the graphics in that Mythbuster episode of his average depth of tackle and how it wasn't as terrible as people like to make it out to be. The missed tackle percentage graphic that showed he was above linebackers like Devin White and Levante David from Tampa Bay, who a lot of Bills fans in the NFL world are in love with when it comes to linebackers. He didn't have a great year last year, but it wasn't as bad as everybody likes to make it out to be. That being said, I don't think he deserves a pass completely for everything, which is why this year, coming into the 2021 season, he is my number one most intriguing Buffalo Bills player to watch, because I think this year I don't want to say it's make or break, but this year I think will be indicative of what Tremaine Edmunds will be going forward. He's going into his 4th year. What kind of jump are we going to see from Tremaine Edmunds? And I think that ties into why he's so intriguing for me. And I think for Bills fans in general, as we see in some of the comments there, because we've got Josh Allen, knock on wood, on offense, right? And we've got Tre'Davious White. But I think a lot of people have seen Tremaine Edmunds as that Josh Allen equivalent on the defense, someone young with raw, tremendous traits that don't come along every day, someone who could grow and be molded into one of the top players at his position. And I think Josh Allen's success last year only intensified the spotlight and the microscope that Tremaine Edmunds has been under these last couple of years and going into this season. Josh has now taken that leap into the upper echelon and the upper tier of quarterbacks in the NFL. You could very easily right now make a case that Josh Allen is the 2nd best quarterback in the NFL. I wouldn't fight you on it. If you want to make that case, that's fine. At the very worst, he's a top 5 quarterback, which is tremendous. And then you go to the other side of the ball where Tremaine Edmunds, guy, again, young, raw talent and size and physical measurables and traits and good stuff going on between the years and all this stuff. And you see somebody who hasn't followed that same trajectory as Josh Allen on the other side. I like this comment that just came in the chat. A jump from Tremaine Edmunds or just more consistent. I think they're tied with one another. I think a jump in his play means that he's playing more consistent. We've seen flashes from Tremaine Edmunds. He's made plays where he gets into the backfield or makes a great play in coverage or makes the right read or does something that makes you stop and say, oh man, that's the guy that the Bills drafted. That's why they traded up for him. This is the guy who could be the future of the defense and run things. That's the guy. But then he has the play right after where he over pursues or he doesn't funnel things back in correctly or he doesn't spill properly or he takes a poor angle to the football or he makes a horrible read and leaves his zone wide open, whether in pass coverage or in run support. I think those two things are tied. I think more consistency in his play will allow him to see a jump in production and jump in play level this past year. And, oh man, that's a drastic statement. He's the Ben Simmons of the team to me. Oh man, that's harsh. That's really harsh. Ooh. Another comment here. I want to see a jump more. Consistency will be great, but I want a top tier linebacker. I get what you're saying with that. And I want to see more splash plays as well and see more plays that make you, sit back and just wonder and be like, oh man, what a play that was. But we've seen him make certain plays that are kind of jaw-dropping and eye-opening. If he can do that on a more regular basis, I think that'll lead to a jump in his play. And to his credit, as Richard says here, he does make all the calls and he does make a lot of adjustments on the defense. I think that's a big aspect of the game that we don't talk about enough with Tremaine Edmunds. We've said it multiple times on this show, though. He is a very young player adjusting to middle linebacker in today's NFL, which is very pass heavy. There's more concepts and schemes and misdirection and nonsense that offenses do to try and purposefully screw you up mentally before you even have to do anything physically. So you're trying to process all this mentally. And then at the same time, physically, you're trying to cover and tackle some of the fastest and most athletically gifted physical monsters in the world. And you're trying to do all that in the blink of an eye. That's a very, very hard thing to do. It's always been a very hard thing to do, but especially in today's NFL where it's so passing driven and so scientific, and he's so young, both, biologically, but also in terms of his experience at the position. So he still has room to grow. And despite all that, yeah, he has a lot on his shoulders mentally in addition to the physically. I think that's part of the reason why he struggled last year. Once he had that shoulder injury, I think that got into his head more. And so he started to slow down his processing speed and reading things in front of him. And I think that got into his head more of, okay, like, I have to read this, I have to adjust to this, but I got a busted wing. How do I do this and take this on and not get hurt further? What do I have to do? You could see him thinking and processing on the field, which is never a good thing. As he got healthier and as Matt Milano came back, we saw him more read and react and attack. I think he can do those type of things. And if he can do them more consistently, you'll see that jump. Going to bring up a super chat here. John big fan of the show. I'm a big fan of yours. We all are at the Cover One team. Thank you so much for your donation. As always, it means so much to us and so much to me personally. I really appreciate you. And what's always great when you give the super chat, the comments that come along with it are usually very thought-provoking and very legitimate. And I like this one here. So John says, the Ravens playoff game showed who he will be. The KC playoff game showed he's not there yet, but he is an alpha. This year, this truly becomes his defense. And I think that right there is what we are looking for Tremaine Edmunds to make this defense his defense. The pass rush could be awesome. The coverage on the back end could be great. Can Tremaine Edmunds take this defense and make it his defense? As much as I love Poyer and as much as I love Hyde, they're both in their 30s. They've got several years of quality ball left, but this isn't going to be their defense for the future of this team. Tre'Davious White, same thing, one of the best in the game at his position, a very premium position, but this isn't Tre'Davious White's defense. Tremaine Edmunds has the opportunity to make this his defense, and he has to do that through more consistent play, more splash plays, and I wouldn't even say, no, I would. In the addition to making the consistent plays in terms of making good plays, he has to eliminate those bad plays with the things that we see where he just over pursues horribly and takes poor angles. And as John stated, that Ravens playoff game, we saw a lot of positive Tremaine stuff. I don't care about the jokes that Lamar can't throw or Baltimore is receiving weaponry, all those types of things. The Baltimore offense is a legitimate offense. And I don't care if Lamar Jackson doesn't throw the ball ever. He is electric when he runs the ball. He's one of the most dangerous, if not the dangerous runner in the entire NFL. Added together with that offensive line and their running backs and their blocking scheme and the offensive scheme as a whole, it's hard to stop that offense. But Tremaine Edmunds played very, very well in that game, as did several players on the Bills defense. Tremaine also played well the year before when we played Baltimore in the regular season. He's shown those glimpses of what he can be. And this year, 2021, he is my most intriguing player to watch because I want to see what does that consistency look like? Do we see more consistent play positively? Do we see less of the mental mistakes and physical mistakes? Do we see more splash plays? Does he start to get on the board with some more interceptions? Do we see him starting to get 4 and 5 interceptions? Something we'd like to see playing in the middle of the field with that wingspan and his athleticism, getting his hands on the balls a little more. I think that's something to keep an eye out for. And with his 5th-year option already being picked up, you're starting to get in that territory of, is he the guy to make this his defense long-term? If not, where do the Bills go? Ideally, he steps up and shows that he can firmly be that guy because him and Milano are a tremendous duo. They play a very important position in today's NFL, and especially in this Bills defense, which is a nickel-based defense. He's going to be tremendously important for the future of this team, and that's why he's my most intriguing player to start this episode off, because I think he's a big part of the future, and his development is a key part of how successful this Buffalo Bills team will be going forward. I'm starting to see some of the comments coming through. Start here with the one from Paulie. Just as Josh had pieces added to the offense last year and made a leap forward, will the pieces added on the other side of the ball help Edmunds do the same? I believe so. Just off of the basic addition of Star Lotulelei coming back, I think that in and of itself is a huge boon to this defense. I think Star Lotulelei coming back and Harrison Phillips being another year removed from that ACL injury are two big things. I have been a fan of Star Lotulelei since he came to the Bills. I recognize he doesn't do a lot of the sexy things or the things that show up on the stat sheet, but I thought he did a lot of the dirty stuff that was unappreciated. And the dirty stuff was occupying blockers to keep second-level defenders free and allow them to clean up and make plays. I think just Star in and of himself coming back is a big, again, boon to this defense. Same thing with, the young pass rushers that we've added, potentially getting production from Gregory Rousseau or Carlos Basham could be a good thing. You got to like that there. I like the addition of F.A. Obata. We can still see something with there. I think a second-year A.J. Epinesa takes a big leap this year. I'm really excited to see what he does. And then a healthy Matt Milano, who's one of the best coverage linebackers in the game. So, yeah, I think the pieces that the Bills added on defense through the draft, coupled with Star coming back from his opt-out, I think those combined with a somewhat normal, regular NFL offseason and a non-COVID offseason, I think those help Edmunds to take a jump. I don't know how much of a jump. I don't know if he makes the jump into being one of the top 5 linebackers in the league, but I think he makes a jump this year that puts all the doubters kind of to the side a little bit and quiets things a little bit. Predicting that he's going to jump to be top tier is a tough thing. I think even the most optimistic Josh Allen fans last year, I don't think anybody was predicting that he was going to be second in the MVP race and, would be one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league by year's end. Those are very optimistic things, but I think he has a solid chance to solidify himself as a top player at the position. I like this question from Jason. Is Milano a better overall linebacker than Tremaine Edmunds? Positions too different to say, ? I don't think the positions are too different. I think right now Matt Milano is the best linebacker on the Buffalo Bills, and that's not necessarily a knock against Tremaine Edmunds. I think Matt Milano is very good. He has one of the best coverage grades at linebacker over the last several years. He makes a lot of splash plays. He shored up his missed tackling a little bit. He's somebody who is very dynamic and offers a lot for this defense. I think right now, Tremaine Edmunds' ceiling is still higher than Matt Milano, but I think Matt Milano is the better linebacker right now at this very moment. Great point here from Taylor. Glad to see you joining us again. Taylor, friend of the show. I love you, Taylor. Appreciate you. Good comment here. Not all players peak at the same time. He's still learning and will still get better. That's a very big thing. He's still young, again, biologically and mentally in terms of learning the game and where he is. He's still got time to get better. And the hope is just we can continue to allow him to get better. And anybody else? Oh, comment here from John on Gregory Rousseau. Telling this thread now, Rousseau is going to be a lot better than draft analysts think. He plays weird. You keep thinking he'll get blown off the ball, but guys never get hands on him. He's definitely one of the most intriguing Bills draft picks in a long time. He almost made my list for this episode. Actually, if I was going to go for like 2-3 hours, he probably easily could have. He's an interesting prospect because the size, the raw tools, the measurables, but then the 1 year of production, the opt-out, the pressure rates in certain scenarios, the fact that he really dominated only against, I don't want to say inferior competition, but less than ideal top-level competition. The fact that he doesn't really have a pass rush plan and technique, but then you see him just physically, he's so imposing. And then you think, okay, with an NFL offseason of coaching and scheme and technique, and then you hear the positive rave reviews that come out of camp so far. Granted, you're getting a lot of those everywhere, which we're going to talk about later in this episode. Yeah, he's an intriguing one for me. Some people loved him throughout the entire draft process and thought he was one of the top 10 prospects in the draft. Other people were down on him and thought he barely cracked like their top 70 or top 60 prospects. It's going to be real interesting. And then, of course, obviously pairing him with, Basham back-to-back edge picks obviously puts more emphasis on that position and more attention. So it's a good call. Great point by Griff that we mentioned earlier. There are rookies that come in older than Edmunds would have been at the end of his contract pre-option. That's very, very, very true. And then a comment here about Gregory Rousseau. Back when Rousseau was drafted, Collinsworth at PFF called him the weirdest nose tackle he has ever seen. What do you think about this? Do you think he'd be a future one tech? I think he could be a one tech, and not even a one tech. I think he can kick inside in pass rush situations. I don't think he's somebody that's going to live as a one tech or live as a defensive tackle. I think he could be in the proverbial NASCAR package and rush. But I don't think he's somebody that we're going to kick inside on first and second down and expect him to fulfill first and second down defensive tackle duties. I think he's an edge with the plus ability of being able to kick inside and be versatile along multiple spots on that front four, but I don't think he's somebody that's going to live in that inside gap and inside role. And now we are – actually, there's a good comment too. I would lump Greg, Boogie, and AJ as equally intriguing. We haven't had these kinds of traits to this extent yet on this team. It will be fun to see how it shakes out. Yeah, I agree. The reason Tremaine is more intriguing for me is because I think this year is more make or break for me. If Rousseau has a less than ideal year or Basham or Epinesa, I don't think it's as detrimental to the career trajectory as it is if Tremaine has a less than ideal year, or vice versa. If Tremaine does what we think he can this year, I think it elevates the defense to another level versus if Greg, Boogie, or AJ have the year we think they could have. I don't think it vaults them into the top status of their position. I think their ceilings right now are different in terms of realistic expectation combined with what a poor performance or poor play would indicate. But I agree with you. They are very intriguing. And I'm really excited for AJ Epinesa. I like him a lot. I liked him last year. I like him even more coming out this year with a regular NFL offseason under his belt. And so that's Tremaine Edmunds. Very intriguing. Could be the future of the defense, somebody that the Bills defense can hang their hat on, along with Tre'Davious White going forward and whatever pass rushers emerge up front. Somebody that could be elite at that second level that would be tremendously helpful for the Bills defense. My second most intriguing Buffalo Bills player for the 2021 season is kind of a group. I wanted to put them all on the graphic for this episode, but I didn't have the space when I was creating. So I just put one. I just put Zach Moss. So the most intriguing, second, I guess, most intriguing Buffalo Bills player for me is a group. It's that running back room. It's Zach Moss. It's Devin Singletary. It's Matt Breida. And the reason that's number two to me this year, or number two for me right now, I wanted something different for the running game going into 2020. I think a lot of us did. That's why all the talk of Travis Etienne and Najee Harris came out, and you saw people clamoring for, the Bills should get Aaron Jones, and all these different thoughts and concerns about the Bills getting a true number one running back and what it could do for the offense. The Bills running game was not good last year for a multitude of reasons, which we spoke about in the Mythbusters episode, again, several episodes ago. It was a good amount of the offensive line. It was some on the running backs. It was some on play calling. There was a lot of things going on. But long story short, the Bills did not run the ball well last year. And I, for one, wanted a different element added to the backfield going into the 2021 season. In a perfect world, I wanted James White. I wanted a true pass-catching back coming out of the backfield. I wanted somebody who ran good routes, who had good hands, who understands leveraging the defense and how to find the openings and zones and coverage. I really wanted James White. Bills did not get James White, but the Bills got Matt Breida. Again, another person who offers something the Bills running back room does not have. Matt Breida is one of the fastest players in the entire NFL. He's got some of the fastest miles per hour clocked speeds over the last several years. He is a very, very, very fast human. He runs tremendously. And not that Singletary and Moss don't, but they're not burners. They're not home run threats. If they've got any quickness and burst, it's in the short yardage, more in the 0 to 20 aspect. Matt Breida is a guy who, if you give him a hole and you give him a lane, he can take it to the house in a blink of an eye. He's done it several times in his career with San Francisco. Not so much with Miami, but a lot of good tape with the 49ers. But we go into this year looking at the running back aspect, and I'm wondering how it's going to shake out from the perspective of last year for the Buffalo Bills. TJ Yeldon was that third running back, and he didn't dress on game days for the majority of games. Tywan Jones, let me just put that out there too. Tywan Jones is listed as a running back, but he doesn't play running back. He is a special teamer. So he's listed as a running back, but he's not really a running back. So the Bills really only dressed two running backs last year. And when Singletary and Moss were both healthy, it was Singletary and Moss. And then based on what kind of scheme they're running that game, some got more carries than the other. And if we look at that room right now, the kick returning aspect is also at play here as well, because if Matt Breida doesn't make the roster as the kick returner, if Marquez Stevenson somehow emerges and is the guy to be the kick returner and the punt returner, or if Isaiah McKenzie can do both, which I don't think so, or if by some chance Matt Breida can do both, which again, I don't think so. Right now, to me, it's looking like you're going to get Breida at kick returner and then Isaiah McKenzie at punt returner. The only way that doesn't happen is if Marquez Stevenson emerges and can do both or do one of those duties. And that changes a lot of things. Because if you're looking at the offense just from the perspective of non-special teams, what running backs are you dressing on game day between Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, and Matt Breida? Moss and Singletary, I like both of them, and I don't think they're terrible. And even though Singletary had that horrible drop against the Chiefs, I'm not writing him off. He still had a very good 2019. But the Bills aren't known for really dressing three running backs on game day. And so if they're only going to dress two and Tywan Jones, who's the odd man out in this backfield? Because I look at this backfield and Moss and Singletary, not that they're the same running back, but they are similar to each other, both in terms of size, stature, play style. Again, Moss is the better pass protector. He is the better zone runner, especially against light boxes. Singletary's more shifty. Moss has a little more power, better goal line guy. They're similar. They still different, but they're similar. Matt Breida, there is no similar running back to Matt Breida on the Bills roster right now. He is, what's up, Ron? I see you in the chat. No worries for being late. I appreciate you. The Bills offense with Matt Breida added to it, that's an aspect that Singletary and Moss don't have. And we don't have on the rest of that running back roster right now. We don't have somebody with that home run, that proven home run threat ability to take it to the house at any point. And I love the idea of Matt Breida coming into the game in the third quarter and getting a run on some draws or a screen or something like that, and just having fresh legs and being able to potentially take it to the house against a tired defense that Josh Allen has been dragging up and down the field for an entire half or 3/4 of the game, something like that. And, good point there from Griff. Something I just saw is that Breida had an 86.4 catch rate or higher the last 3 years, but a very good point. There is a very low sample size with that. And also, catch rate coming on like screens and little dump offs and things like that is different. But to your point, yeah, solid catch rate there. And I see a lot of comments coming through with, Thurman Thomas. Oh man, if you could have Thurman Thomas in this offense, man, that would be something. Or even Fred Jackson, as this comment here brought up. Yeah, imagine 2009 to 2014 Fred Jackson on this offense. It would be very, very interesting. And see, that's the comment. I'm going to get to two comments here right now. The one comment from John saying, Breida gives the Bills this. He hits a crease and goes 80 or catches the dump off and gets 50. The Bills don't have that right now other than Breida. And Paulie, to your comment, who is Breida a better complement to, Moss or Singletary? I really think either or. I would say just purely in a vacuum, probably Moss, because Moss has more of the physical, move the pile, tough yards kind of aspect to his game, and I still think he offers solid pass pro and enough in the receiving game that he can be a threat on first and second down. But I think Breida's a really strong complement to either, because again, Breida's strength is he can take it 80 in the blink of an eye. He can take it 50 in the blink of an eye. Moss and Singletary aren't going to do that. Not that that's terrible, but Moss and Singletary aren't going to do that. Breida offers a very different aspect. So this running back room is so intriguing for me, especially as preseason comes around, because I want to see what the snaps look like in the preseason. I want to hear about the carries and the workload with the offense in training camp. And then how does it translate to games? Who starts to get what workload, where and when? How does Matt Breida look? I don't think it's a guarantee that Matt Breida makes this roster. And we know the Bills like their draft picks, and the fact that they used day 2 picks on Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, to me, indicates that it would be tough for them to cut bait. But they're also not the type to just, follow along with the sunk cost fallacy and be like, well, we spent a third on these guys, so we have to keep them. The best guy is going to be kept, and the best guy will get more carries and more touches. But it's undeniable that Matt Breida offers this Bills offense something that neither Moss or Singletary have, which is that home run threat, home run ability. And so this running back room is extremely interesting to me because, again, we need to be a better running offense in 2021. But that doesn't mean we need to run the ball more. Oh, and as Ron Beck just pointed out, they do also have Antonio Williams, and they do like him as well. So that's another thing to add into the mix. And, Taylor, I see your question. I'm going to get to it in a minute. I like that question, Taylor. The Bills need to be a better running team in 2021. And as we've stated on this show multiple times, that doesn't mean they have to run the ball more. It means they just need to be more effective at running the ball when they run the ball. And having a guy who only needs a tiny little crease and can hit the hole is fantastic, like Matt Breida. And I'm going to say this a lot, as we continue to talk through this episode, as we've stated multiple times on this show, how the Bills used more of a zone running scheme last year that dwarfed their gap run attempts versus being more balanced in 2019. If they stay with that zone running philosophy that they ended 2020 with, Matt Breida, his success in the zone running scheme cannot be understated. And again, having somebody who can just take the ball to the house at any given minute is a nice, easy way to make your running game more effective and more of a threat when you have to account for that speed coming out of the backfield. And being a more effective running team is another weapon added to this offense that unlocks this offense even more tremendously than Josh Allen's progression and the addition of Stephon Diggs did last year. Because now you've got a vaunted passing attack that you have to honor every step of the way if you're an opposing defense. But if you have that speed in the backfield or just a better running game in general, it's another mental aspect for the defense that they have to account for and they have to consider. And it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. I want to get back to, no, we're not going to do this. We're not doing Christian Wade RB1 and you put the laugh out loud. You know what you did. We're not doing that. How dare you? It did make me laugh, but no. Question from Taylor that I mentioned earlier. Can Breida take the McKenzie part of the offense? So those jet sweeps, that gadgetry. That's an interesting thought. I think he could. I don't think he's as agile in tight spaces as Isaiah McKenzie. I don't think he's as much of the guy that can make you miss in a phone booth as Isaiah McKenzie is, but I think he offers more burst and more speed. I think he could get the job done, but I don't think it's a holistic like for like swap out. But that being said, I feel like we could work him into that role potentially. And what other comments do we have? What other comments? And I think that's it for that aspect. Yeah, it's my number 2. Want to see what the running back room looks like, how it shakes out. I really don't think the Bills, again, unless one of them is playing special teams, I don't think the Bills dress through running backs on game day. So again, do we have a situation where Moss and Breida are dressing game 1 and Singletary's not dressing, or Moss isn't dressing, or does Breida get cut? It's a very interesting aspect to think about, especially knowing that the Bills need to be a better running team in 2021 to unlock more aspects of this offense. Also related to the running backs, to the offense, Cody Ford is my 3rd most intriguing Buffalo Bill for 2021. And it's not just related to him, it's related to the entire offensive line as a whole. So here's the Bills' offensive line from a starter's perspective, really. Deion Dawkins is 27. He is an unrestricted free agent in 2025. Mitch Morse is 29. He's an unrestricted free agent in 2023. He can be cut in 2022, and the Bills can save $7.5 million. That's because there's $3.75 in dead cap if he were to be cut. Darrell Williams, starting right tackle, who the Bills retained this offseason, is 28 years old. He is an unrestricted free agent in 2024, but there is an out in his contract in 2023 where the Bills could save $7.125 million, and that would come with a $1.8 million dead cap hit. John Feliciano, 29 years old, unrestricted free agent in 2024. He can be cut in 2022 with a dead cap hit of $1.5 million, or cut in 2023 for a dead cap hit of $750,000. So, I just saw that comment from John, trade Cody Ford for Tebow. Kidding. That's hilarious, but also very sad. I don't like that joke. So Cody Ford, who is currently 2024, he's an he's an unrestricted free agent in 2023, 2nd round pick in the 2019 draft, 38 overall. What is he going forward? And what does he look like? No, Spencer Brown is not. If you mean now, I disagree on that. I don't think Spencer Brown is ready to start in 2021, and he would have to do something amazing to force Darrell Williams, who was a midseason All-Pro selection at right tackle, to force Darrell Williams inside to right guard. That would be very, very interesting, but it could happen. But I doubt it. I highly doubt it. So Cody Ford, in the midst of this offensive line, looking at things going forward, who is the pillar that we can hang our hat on the offensive line, a unit that has to 1,000% protect Josh Allen. Josh Allen is the future. Josh Allen is the franchise. So what do you need for Josh Allen? You need weapons for him to be able to throw to, and you need offensive linemen to be able to protect him. Right now, for the foreseeable future, Deion Dawkins is locked in. Great locker room guy, great attitude, leader of the team, solid left tackle, very affordable contract now that a lot of those tackle contracts have started to come in over the last couple of years, and he's locked in. So boom, you've got Deion Dawkins. But the rest of the line is very much in question going forward. Darrell Williams has several strong years of quality ball left in him, but he has that potential out, and he's 28. Is he going to be the guy on that right side for the foreseeable future? Is it going to be Dion? Is it going to be Darrell Williams? We've got Cody Ford, who is, as of now, I would say penciled in as left guard, but there's questions there. Mitch Morse, 29, unrestricted free agent in 2023, has had concussion issues. Legitimately, he's another 1 or 2 concussions away from potentially maybe never even being able to play football again. We've got John Feliciano penciled in at right guard, who's seen a lot of fluctuation in his play. Cody Ford, for me, is so intriguing because I think we need another person on this offensive line to solidify this offensive line going forward. As of right now, the only thing we know, like that's a guaranteed certain thing for the future of the offensive line in terms of who will play solid and who's on the contract and who has the age to match being a legitimate piece going forward for several multitude of years, it's Deion Dawkins. Darrell Williams is behind him right there. And then Mitch Morse is in there, but the injury history is murky. John Feliciano's age and his play and his contract, murky. Again, even Darrell Williams is murky. And then you go to that left guard spot with Cody Ford. Can he lock down a spot on this offensive line? He was taken in the top 40. He was a second-round pick. The Bills moved up to get him. Can he be the player that they drafted him to be? He played right tackle his first year. Didn't really work out. Kicks inside to guard last year, where a lot of people, myself included, thought he should have been all along, and still struggles. Not as bad, but not great. Then he gets hurt. What are we getting out of him? Can he be a piece that we can count on going forward? If so, again, he's an unrestricted free agent in 2023, but the contract, the affordability of that contract going forward and what he could be, it's very interesting. He's still young. And why he's so intriguing to me is, again, this is somebody who the Bills spent draft resources on, who they like, and who they drafted with a certain mindset in their brains of what he could be. And even if you're just looking at 2021, he needs to be someone that we can rely on, because the interior of the offensive line last year was not great. Between the injuries and the shuffling that resulted from the injuries, the interior of the offensive line last year was not a mess, but it was less than stable. And thank goodness for Dawkins and Darrell Williams at the outside, providing that pillar support and pillar strength on the outside, because again, the interior was jumbled, to say the least. So we need stability in that interior line. I think a healthy Mitch Morse stabilizes things greatly, but I don't know if he's going to be the starting center on this team for the next 4-5 years, maybe even in the next 3 years. I don't know if that's the thing. Cody Ford has the potential to be on this team for the next 5-6 years, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And this year, it's going to be a big step in that direction, because one, if he plays well, it makes the team better in 2021. But two, if he can show that promise and that he can potentially reach that ceiling, he's somebody the Bills could potentially have on the offensive line for a long time, and that would be fantastic. And here's the comment from John here. The interior O-line was utterly destroyed by Aaron Donald versus the LA Rams, Buckner versus the Colts, and Chris Jones versus KC. Not sure we can handle elite interior guys even now. Yeah, I'm not so sure either. I wanted a guard in the top of the draft, and I really was hoping like Elijah Vera Tucker was going to fall. And then I even wanted some of the guys like Wyatt Davis, Landon Dickerson, Creed Humphrey. I know he's more center, but I thought he had the potential to swap out to guard, even Kendrick Green. That interior scares me a little bit. And not that anybody can handle those elite guys. I mean, not to kind of give a pass to anyone, but Aaron Donald destroys everyone. Buckner usually gets the best of everyone. Chris Jones is a monster as well. So those guys win their matchups 9 out of 10 times, which is why they're all pros and why they get paid what they get paid and why they're so great. So I don't want to say that, we should have drafted somebody would have made us handle those guys better, because that's not what would have happened. But I think that's definitely an issue. The interior of the offensive line was a concern in both the run game and in pass pro towards the back end of the year, especially in the playoffs and against Indianapolis and against KC. So it's something I think needs to be shored up. And Cody Ford is, I don't want to say our best hope to do that, but I think he's the best option to reliably stabilize things for the foreseeable future. When I say foreseeable future, I mean more than just this year, next year, and the year after. I'm talking long term, because again, Josh Allen Our Super Bowl window, knock on wood, should be open as long as we have Josh Allen. And you need to protect him and have weapons. And we seem to have the weapons piece worked out as of now. Again, knock on wood, we need that offensive line piece shored up as well. And that's why Cody Ford is one of my most intriguing Buffalo Bills for 2021. My fourth most intriguing Buffalo Bill for 2021. This should be no surprise to anybody if you watch this show and you follow me on Twitter or either or. Dane Jackson is my fourth most intriguing Buffalo Bill for 2021. Just off of the basis of this first initial fact right here. So the only cornerbacks who are under contract after this year for the Buffalo Bills, the only corners. Now, I'm not talking safeties. I'm not talking people. I'm just talking pure corners. The only corners under contract after this year for the Buffalo Bills are Tre'Davious White, Rashad Wildgoose, and Dane Jackson. That's it. Corner 2 has been a wanted upgrade from me all offseason, not because I think Levi is bad, but because I wanted a different skill set and schemability aspect from that corner 2. I wanted to be able to play some more man. I wanted more reliability from an athleticism and speed standpoint, scheme versatility standpoint, so we didn't always have to swing the safety over that side to help and do things like that, as I've talked about all offseason. And Dane Jackson, as of right now, as of this moment, is going to be in heavy rotation for that cornerback number 2 spot, along with Levi Wallace. And the real question for me is, can he separate himself from Levi Wallace, who, in Levi, not a sexy player, not a flashy player, but very reliable, very responsible. He is a reliable, responsible starter in this Buffalo Bills defense. He's smart. He's got a good head on his shoulders. Lowest missed tackle percentage on the entire Bills roster last year. He's got length. Doesn't have a lot of size. Doesn't have a lot of weight. Doesn't have tremendous athleticism. But again, in this Bills defense, the Bills like him. He's reliable and he is responsible. On a 1-year deal, Bills brought him back. Not under contract for next year, obviously, because it's a 1-year deal. And Dane Jackson, who is someone that potentially could usurp that role from Levi. I think regardless, we're going to see rotation at that corner 2 spot. And as of right now, it looks like it's going to be Levi and Dane or Dane and Levi, vice versa. I don't know who's going to get, if someone gets 55 or 45% of the snaps or 60-40, but it's going to be close to a timeshare, as we've seen the last several years, back to Levi and Kevin Johnson, and then even Levi and Norman mixed in. And, that's an interesting comment from Ron there. Steven Nelson will cave on his demands and become a Buffalo Bill before training camp. Interesting prediction, and I would be a fan of that. I'd be fine with that. But predictions aside, if we're just looking at it, Dane Jackson looks to be someone that we're going to have to count on in some form or fashion in 2020. And he's received a ton of rave reviews in training camp. Again, as mentioned earlier, and as mentioned last week by Aaron Quinn, pretty much everyone's receiving rave reviews at this point. Nobody's coming out and saying so-and-so looked like crap during OTAs or someone looks terrible in mandatory minicamp. You're getting a lot of glowing reviews, rave reviews, a lot of positivity. But Dane Jackson is someone who flashed at times last year. Granted, it was a very small sample size, but he's got good zone eyes and good instincts. He's physical and run support in terms of making the tackle and setting the edge. He's beautiful with his crack replace technique coming forward. And again, he played well in that limited sample size, and that playing well comes against guys like DeAndre Hopkins, who he's shown the ability to play with. Now, the only downside is he's still in that mold of the less than athletic and less than speedy corner number 2. But he is a good fit for this defense, in coming from that Pittsburgh defense in college, which translates well to the Buffalo Bills defense in terms of the scheme and verbiage and everything that they use and what they do there. So he kind of had a head start coming in, but he sat a lot of last year, didn't really dress. But when he came in, he looked good. And he's somebody that I think a lot of Bills Mafia is excited about this year, but even more so for me because, again, we only have Trey, Rashad Wildgoose, and Dane Jackson under contract after this year. And Rashad Wildgoose is there just because we drafted him this year. Dane Jackson is just there because we drafted him last year. So by default, they're under contract, basically. There is no reliability at that corner position, or stability, I should say, past this year as of right now. Now, we could come out and say, yeah, but they're probably going to bring back Levi and it should be fine, or they could sign someone, or they could draft someone, yada, yada. But in the scope of here and now and what this team is going forward, Dane Jackson is going to be a significant piece of the defense in 2021. Some on the Cover One team think that he can beat out Levi Wallace and be the main corner two in that rotation, which we could see happen. But I'd like to see what Dane Jackson does in 2021, because I think if he can solidify himself, we've got our corner number two for this year, for next year, and the year after. And that would be tremendous. That way we wouldn't have to worry about corner number two and pairing them with Tre'Davious White. And that's one less piece on the defense we have to worry about. Because again, as we go forward, a lot of questions have to be answered. Is Tremaine Edmunds going to be the prince that was promised? What do Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer look like as they get deeper into their 30s? What does the defensive line look like after this year? Because Mario Addison is getting older. Jerry Hughes is going to be a free agent next year, and he's past his prime, but he's still very, very, very productive. There's some questions that have to be answered around the entire defense. And then on the offensive side of the ball, what does Josh Allen's extension and contract look like? What does receiver look like with Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley and Gabriel Davis and Isaiah Hodgins? What does the running back position look like? What does the offensive line position look like? What does the tight end position look like? There are legitimate questions that have to be answered after this season. And it would be nice to have one less that needs to be answered, because Dane Jackson steps up, announces himself, and plants a flag as the corner number two, and is somebody that is, one, a good player, and two, would be under pretty solid, cost-effective cost control for the next several years. And it will be one less question for us to potentially answer on that side of the ball. And those are my four for this one. There's a lot of intriguing Bills players for 2021, but those are my four as of right now. And now I want to start to go through and answer comments and thoughts as we start to go through. I'm already even going to go back and I'm going to throw out this comment from Nick. Hit the like button. It's free. I appreciate you, Nick. Yeah, likes are nice. They feel nice in your heart and in your soul. And legitimately, they help videos track and trend better when it comes to search functionality and what gets promoted more. So yeah, that's tremendous. Appreciate you guys for doing that. Comment from Ron there. Hoping that Ford takes a nice step in the right direction this year. Yeah, I am as well. Ooh, I think this is a bit unfair in the comment from Trey. Cody cost us a W versus the Texans. I think that was a bad call on that blindside block. And if that's the play you're specifically referring to, I wouldn't put that on him. I don't think he did anything wrong. That was a horrible call. The NFL came out and admitted it. Now, the missed block on Cunningham on the QB sweep was a bigger one. I don't remember if that was Ford or not, but that was a bigger one. Comment here from Jason. If Ford doesn't step up, who's the next best option? And I see a lot of comments coming through about it being Forrest Lamp. Yeah, probably Forrest Lamp, which doesn't make me feel much better. I have to crunch the numbers, but I would be a huge fan of the Bills being able to bring in David DeCastro, who was just released by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's phenomenal, but I have to take a look at the numbers and see what it would look like. He was obviously released for cap reasons, and I have to crunch the numbers and see there. I haven't done that as of yet, or if you want to get a jump start on it, feel free to @Greg Thompson on Twitter and see if the math works out. I have not done my due diligence with that, but if Ford doesn't step up, yeah, you're probably looking at Lamp or some hodgepodge mixing. Honestly, if Ford doesn't step up, I don't even want to pay attention to what the line is, because that makes me feel less confident than I already feel now. Here we go. More comments. A lot of Forrest Lamp jokes. These are pretty quality Forrest Lamp jokes. Great comment here from Liam, tying back to what I was saying about the positive news coming out of camp. They aren't going to say anything negative, but they also don't bring up positives about everyone. That's a very good comment and very insightful from Liam. So yeah, they're not going to say anything negative, but they're not out here just throwing positives and superlatives around for everyone. And they are doing that for Dane Jackson. We've also heard from several media outlets and several different reporters that he's done well. So that's a fair comment there from Liam. Remember the Cover One team. Good comment here from Jason. Levi and Dane are pretty equal in the athleticism department, but Dane is more aggressive. I would say he's more aggressive at the catch point. and in catch retention, and maybe even coming forward in general as well. I would say that as well. Ooh, John, would the Bills take their shot and trade for Stephon Gilmore, $8.5 million cap hit for acquiring in 2021? I don't know. I don't know if they can make it work. Well, they could make it work monetarily if they do some more of the Stephon Diggs extension type things and move some money around potentially. Oh, that would be a very interesting one. I also don't know if the Pats give him up for that. That's the first hurdle. I think the Pats are, despite the fact that they spend a lot of ridiculous money that'll look ridiculous in the future potentially, the Pats are a much better team than they were last year. I don't think they trade Stephon Gilmore given the moves that they made this offseason. So, I mean, if they were going to trade him, I think the Bills would definitely do their due diligence and kick the tires, but I see the odds of him being traded very not likely ever since the activity that the Patriots had this offseason and how much money they spent and how active that they were. Comment here. Any synergy between Dane Jackson and Damar Hamlin pick connection? There is, and somebody may be able to look it up. I think they were either roommates at Pitt or somehow very good friends at Pitt for something that's more than just teammates. I think there is a genuine connection between the two of them. I'm also really excited for Damar Hamlin. I think he's somebody who is more versatile than people have given him credit for. He had a lot of snaps in the slot at Pitt and all over the place. I know he's listed as a safety, but he has a lot of versatility and Swiss Army knife capability on the defense. So he's someone I'm very excited for. I like late round picks and I like defensive backs. So Damar Hamlin's right up my alley. But yeah, there is definite synergy between the two of them. I don't remember what specifically it is, but there does exist that synergy between the two of them. Comment here from Daniel. I'm really looking forward to seeing Dane's progress in year 2. Yeah, me too. I think obviously, him being one of my most intriguing players. I liked what he showed in flashes last year. I like what his success would mean to the Bills defense, both in 2021 and going forward. And it's something definitely to keep an eye on. Comment here from Nick. Poyer had his best season, I thought, last year, and Bean has wide receivers signed till Josh Allen's rookie contract ends. So wide receivers should be interesting in a couple of years. Yeah, I think it could even be interesting starting next year. Does Emmanuel Sanders come back? Is Cole Beasley on the roster? Not from all the off the field activity stuff, but just on field stuff, and even if he is, cool, you have Stephon Diggs and you have Cole Beasley. Does Gabriel Davis solidify himself as a solid wide receiver number 2? Or is Isaiah Hodgins still there? Or has Marquez Stevenson stepped up a little bit? I don't think there's any given wide receiver 2 right now. Gabriel Davis looks like he could wear that hat, but I'm not ready to firmly put my stamp of approval on that for 2022. So I think there are some questions with the wide receiver grouping starting as early as 2022, which is why, that development of other positions where we have guys already that could be the future is so important. So if we have to spend a draft pick or money on a wide receiver 2 to come in like we did with Emmanuel Sanders this year, or even with Marquez Stevenson, we have that flexibility, whether in the cap or draft currency, to be able to make that type of move happen. Ooh, comment here. Would it be wild if someone like Nick McLeod came out of nowhere and was in the mix for CB2? Sorry, I had to take a drink of water there. That would be kind of cool. Or if even Elijah Griffin did it. I just always think it's so hard for undrafted free agents to make the team, let alone get a starting spot. So I guess to answer your question or back up your statement, yeah, it would be wild if someone like Nick McLeod or Elijah Griffin came out of nowhere and was in the mix at CB2. That would be very interesting. And as people's comments are coming through, Stephon Gilmore hated Buffalo. He made that comment about when he went to New England, like, oh, it'll be nice for my family to be able to see me now since I'll be on primetime. Ha ha ha. Yeah, not great on that. And comment from Liam. Sounds like David DeCastro. Thank you for the water. Sounds like David DeCastro. That was my wife. Thank you. Sounds like David DeCastro is retiring with ankle issues. Oh, that's coming from multiple. Oh man. That's really unfortunate for him. He was a solid guard for a really, really long time, and it sucks that he has to. I saw it briefly as I was doing my prep for the episode, and I didn't go down the rabbit hole on everything. So I appreciate you guys, both Liam and then Bill's Mafia STF, for coming through in the comments with that. Oh man, that's really unfortunate. And a comment from Rich, and several other people here. Yeah, Ike Bodker's an option at guard. He's probably the next man up, if not Lamp. It's either him or Lamp at that guard position. Ike Bodker, ironically, was better than a lot of people think last year. I think a lot of people put him and Brian Winters in the same category or think they're the same person, both literally and figuratively with their play. But Bodker was actually good in spells last year. It was decently stable down the stretch and even into the playoffs. Not great, and not somebody who I'd like to start and trot out there week in and week out. Somebody I'm much more comfortable with, as a backup and a guy who can show up in a game if somebody goes down or be a spot starter. But yeah, you're looking at Ike Bodker, Forrest Lamp type of territory if Cody Ford can't lock that down. What else? Ooh, comment. I got to go to this one first. Gabriel Davis is not a number 2 wide receiver. I'm very interested to see why you think that. I think he's shown really good potential. I think he showed really good potential last year, and his trajectory has him on pace to be a number 2 wide receiver. I'd love to hear why you think Gabriel Davis is not a wide receiver too. Comment here from Connor. Do you think Isaiah McKenzie will be on the roster next year? I don't even know if Isaiah McKenzie is going to be on the roster this year. Aaron Quinn dropped that last week here on Disguise coverage that he doesn't think Isaiah McKenzie's a lock. Greg Thompson has also mentioned that in spurts here and there. I think a lot of us think that Isaiah McKenzie is pure lock on this team. I don't necessarily think that's a thing. So do I think he will be on the roster next year? I wouldn't be surprised if he's not. I also don't think he's a lock to make the roster this year, especially if Marquez Stevenson locks down punt and kick return duties. I think Isaiah McKenzie is out. Oh, comment there from Bill's Mafia STF. Perino thinks he's almost locked. That's fair, Matt Perino. Oh, for this year, cool. That's fair. I can see why people would think he's a lock, given the role that he did last year and how successful he was at it and the expectation that he's the punt returner this year. I just would I be surprised if he made the team? Definitely not. But would I also, on the opposite end, be surprised if he got cut? No, I wouldn't be shocked. And as Greg Thompson has also mentioned, I believe he said it on the show when we did some stuff together, as nice it is and heartwarming of the story for Isaiah McKenzie with the whole, I play for candy. At the end of the day, he still went out, tested free agent waters. Maybe there's a little more to it where he didn't get the contract that he had hoped for. And so he came back to the Bills because the difference was negligible. And maybe that was even the best offer that he got. I think there might be a little more to it than that. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either way. If he makes the team, okay, cool. If he doesn't make the team, I won't be like, oh man, I can't believe he got cut. Yeah, I don't see that. And then the follow-up there from Connor, I honestly have no clue why our front office isn't confident in his abilities and how he can help our special teams. If you're referring to Isaiah McKenzie, I think a lot of that is due to his fumbling history at the punt returner position. This goes back to him in college. This goes back to him with the Denver Broncos, even a little bit in his first several years with the Bills. He's had a case of the dropsies at the returning aspect. And that, as much as you love speed and explosion and what you can do when you get the ball in your hands, if you can't just secure the catch, you can't be a returner, especially on punt return, which is hectic, where you've got dudes flying by you at 1,000 miles an hour ready to take your head off. And yeah, if you can't lock the ball down, that's big time problems. That's not great. Comment here from Y Fun Show tonight. Thank you very much. Going through the comments. Trey, this is in follow-up to Gabriel Davis. You think Gabriel Davis is lazy in his breaks? Interesting. I disagree, but fair point. If you could point to some specific games or routes where you saw that or thought that, I'd love to take a peek because I don't think he's the best route runner, but I wouldn't say he's lazy in his breaks. I also think his route running is something that can improve as he gets more acclimated to the NFL, given what he's shown in the capacity demonstrated in his rookie year. And so, yeah, Daniel's comment there. Gabriel Davis doesn't have to be a wide receiver 2 this year. That's what Sanders is for. But year 3 Davis should be more ready to step up to wide receiver number 2. I agree with that. Or even potentially, I know he's the hot topic for a lot of Bills fans, Isaiah Hodgins. I really want to see what he does. He's one of my most intriguing guys as well. But I've talked about him heavily over the last couple of shows, so I didn't want to talk about him again. Ooh, comment here from Caesar. Who do you think will make the final cut on D lineman? This is one of the hardest questions for this offseason, man. I think the starting 4 are Jerry Hughes, Star Lotulelei, Ed Oliver, Mario Addison. So that's 4. Basham makes it, that's 5. Rousseau makes it, that's 6. AJ Epinesa makes it, that's 7. Harrison Phillips makes it, that's 8. Then you're starting to look into the realm of, I know Cox got hurt now, which also really sucks. Pour one out for Brian Cox Jr. That really sucks. But any injury ever, but especially now at this time of the offseason, that really sucks. I feel for him with that. Daryl Johnson, it's going to be tough. F.A. Obata has a really nice skill set. I'm interested to see how that tracks and that trends. You've got Justin Zimmer. I don't know if I'm ready to say who will make the final cut on D lineman right now. I think the 8 that I gave are pretty solid unless something crazy or wonky happens. But I think that's one of the biggest mysteries for this entire offseason of who makes the final cut. How many defensive tackles do we keep versus how many defensive ends? How acclimated do Basham and Rousseau get to the NFL to the point that, okay, maybe we don't have to keep as many interior defensive linemen because one of them or both of them can kick inside and do some different things. What does AJ Epinesa's progression look like? Does he solidify himself as one of the top 3 or even top 2 edge players on this team? I think there's still a lot of questions in the air, but that is an awesome question and something that we will be talking about a lot through this offseason and keeping our eye on as we continue to go. And let's see what else. Comment here from Peter. McKenzie has more shifty movement than the guy they drafted this year, being Marquez Stevenson. He's going to be better for punt returner. He's also the best option for the jet sweep. I think Hodgins is destined for the practice squad. Lots to unpack there in that comment. I do think McKenzie is more shake and bake and make you miss in a phone booth than Marquez Stevenson is. But Stevenson has more long speed and more burst. He is a 4.3 40 type of guy. I know his 40 didn't indicate that, but he plays much faster. And I also read that he was, this may sound ridiculous, but he was running into the wind when he did his 40. So that was part of the reason why he was a couple tenths slower than his anticipated time. It's hard to watch him on tape and not get excited. His long speed is legitimate. I also wouldn't say that I like McKenzie on the jet sweep a lot, and obviously he's got production at the NFL level that Marquez Stevenson doesn't, but I wouldn't make the case that Marquez Stevenson couldn't replicate some of McKenzie's production in the jet sweep aspect. I don't want to say he definitely can, because expecting any rookie to step in and give you quality NFL snaps is never given for anyone, even the top picks overall. It's not an exact science, but I think you might be selling Marquez Stevenson a little short there. Question from Nick. What if Kumaro shows up and snags the punt and kick returner spot? I don't think he would be the punt and kick returner. I don't see that happening, but he is a good special teamer. And to your point, he's a solid wide receiver and he has good size. He has tremendous size and he's a good special teamer as a whole. But I wouldn't say that he's somebody who's going to lock down a kick returner spot or punt returner spot. I would be very, very, very shocked if he does that. Starting to continue to wind through the comments as I throw up the banner here that says Toodles, you guys, which means we're starting to wind down. I love this part because I love saying Toodles. It's a fun word and it makes me laugh. Continuing to go through the comments as I always like to do. Interesting comment here from Rich. I think Gabriel Davis and Isaiah Hodgins will cut into some of Sanders' playing time, but will be important in the playoffs where the younger players fade. Fresh legs win. I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to have a tremendous season for the Buffalo Bills. I love the signing. I love the addition. I like that take. I think that's interesting. I I don't know if Sanders is necessarily going to have the stats that are going to show he's having an amazing year, but I think time and time again, we are going to see Emmanuel Sanders emerge as that guy who comes up with an 8-yard catch on 3rd and 7, who gets the tough yards on a 3rd and 4 and converts, and who just does a lot of things that makes your offense better both on and off the field. I think he's a tremendous, tremendous ad. I'm very excited for that, to see what he could be and what he could do. What else? Anything? Oh, I know a lot of people are clamoring for Jarrell Casey, but dumping Zimmer and Phillips, I don't think is the right way to go, especially given contract scenarios, how guys played last year. I like Jarrell Casey and what he could potentially bring, but I don't know if I'm ready to say right now, bring in Jarrell Casey and dump Zimmer and Phillips. That's a lot for me. Just a little bit there. Wow, there are a lot of comments. I'm going to keep going through, keep knocking out some of these. Oh, Liam here with who the defensive lineman he thinks are going to make it. So Starr, Oliver, Hughes, Addison, Rousseau, Basham, Epinesa, Phillips, Butler, Obata. I completely forgot about Vernon Butler, probably because I didn't want the Bills to bring him back and I wanted Quentin Jefferson instead. I think that's pretty fair, especially with the contract restructure that Butler went through. I think he's pretty much a lock to make this team. I think what Liam's got right there is a very, 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 very realistic possibility of what the Bills' defensive line looks like coming out of camp and coming into the regular season. Oh, sorry. A lot of talking from me on this episode, so some more water. Question from Connor. Do you think Wild Goose has the potential to become our corner 2 at some point? He played a decent amount of it in Wisconsin. I like his hips. I like his speed. I like his recovery. I like his athleticism. I like his fluidity. I like his aggressiveness. However, he has to be tamed a little bit. The Wild Goose has to become domesticated a little bit in order to not be too over-aggressive, draw flags, or put himself out of position, get too handsy, things like that. I think he, as of right now, has potential to be a slot, more realistically, the potential to be a starting slot corner in the NFL, with some potential to move outside because he does have good speed. But I'm not ready to say that he could be the CB2 at some point, but if he does, I wouldn't be shocked. I think he has traits that could translate there, and I did like that pick a lot. I think he's an intriguing guy as well. As we go through comments on Tanner Gentry. Ooh. Comment here from Taylor. How many just a special teams player can we keep? Roster spots seem to be tighter than ever to keep too many just a special teams player. I think Tywan Jones. I think Tyler Medikevich. I think Saran Neal. Those 3 for sure. Forgive me if I'm forgetting someone. My brain is a little mush today. Those 3 for sure. And then depending on what we're looking at from like the returner aspect, that's again why if Breida can knock down a kick returner spot, that's awesome because he can also see some running back duty. Or in an ideal world, Marquez Stevenson shows that he can be both punt returner and kick returner. And then we have somebody who is the punt returner, kick returner, and can do wide receiver gadget stuff and be a deep threat all in one roster spot. And that way we save 2 roster spots. So I would say 3 for sure, unless I'm missing someone here and there. But I don't think I am. Good comment here from Kevin about Marcus Stevens. He can change direction at top speed, which is rare. That is fair. He can change speeds. That is very nice for him. What else? Anyone? Yep. Comment here from Bills Mafia STF. Yep. I only think Butler is staying because of the salary. We get nothing cutting him. That's correct as well. I would see that as well. I don't think. Oh, good comment here. Also from Bills Mafia STF. I forgot Jaquan Johnson. Yeah, Jaquan Johnson. Well, I think Jaquan Johnson's making it anyway because I think he and DeMar Hamlin, unless Tyreek Thompson comes out and is ridiculously sweet, I think Jaquan Johnson and DeMar Hamlin are your backup safeties. Combined with the fact that Jaquan Johnson plays special teams, I think he's making that team. I just don't see Jaquan Johnson as just a special teams player. Obviously, he has been to this point, but he's more of like the backup safety unless Hamlin jumps him, just because we don't have anybody else on the depth chart. This is hilarious, and I'm leaving it up. I'll read other questions, but I'm not going to pull it up on video. This comment from Liam around Rashad Wild Goose. He must evolve from Wild Goose to Calm Swan. That is fantastic. I'm leaving it up. I will read other comments, but I am not putting them up because I don't think anyone that any other comment that comes through will top that. That is excellent from Liam. I'll probably end up screenshotting that and tweeting it. That was fantastic. Comment there from Caesar. I think future defensive backs will be Dane and DeMar Hamlin. I think those two will be with us for a while. They could be. They've got a lot of good stuff going on between the years in terms of how they see the game and how they approach the game, combined with their technique and what they were taught at Pitt. They're a good fit here. What else do we got? Oh, comment here from Bills Mafia STF. For what it's worth, on Bruce Nolan's pod today, Matt Perino said at camp that Marquez Stevenson did not flash his speed traits at wide receiver drills, and he couldn't comment on kick return or punt return. That's very interesting. That's very good to know. Glad you put that in the comments. Nice. Bruce Nolan is fantastic, as is Matt Perino. I haven't checked the pod out yet tonight as I'm doing this, but that's very interesting to know. What else? I think that's going to wrap things up for tonight. We've gone an hour and 15, which at this point is expected. Even in the offseason when there's nothing to talk about, we seem to find a lot of things to talk about here on Disguise Coverage and regularly go over an hour. So I like the toodles, you guys. I'm going to put it up, but Liam, that comment is gold, and you deserve a bunch of gold stars for it. I don't have any to give out, but if I did, I'd give you a lot because that comment is immaculate, and so are you for making that comment. I want to thank everyone for riding with me on this episode, whether you were watching here on the live stream, whether you listen to this episode later, watch this episode later, any of this kind of stuff. I appreciate anyone and everyone that watches, listens to the show, supports. It means the world to me, and especially having the live engagement aspect. This makes this so much better when I can do this and got you guys in the chat with your comments, questions, thoughts, concerns, the back and forth with each other, and the questions coming to me, the back and forth with me. It's great. I really appreciate you guys more than you will ever know. Please rate and review and subscribe to the pod. While you're watching here live, please throw a like up onto YouTube. Again, it's not just for posterity or for aesthetics. It genuinely helps Disguise Coverage and Cover One as a whole trend and get to the front of the page and all those algorithms and all those different things. So your likes and your reviews and your subscriptions, they genuinely do go a long way and mean a lot. So please drop that and do that on your way out, or do it now if you don't mind. And let me answer this just before. No, that's not it. Oh, Bills Mafia is chatty. Where is it? Yes, Tommy, that is a Christmas tree that's behind me. I'm a big fan of Christmas. I wanted to keep up the big tree in the living room all year round. Compromise with the wife was I could get a mini tree and put it here in the office. And then what I do is I change the color of the garland based on what holiday is going on. So around Easter time, I had more like pastel garland and ornaments on it. Now it's red, white, and blue for Memorial Day. And then for 4th of July, come fall and Halloween, I'll decorate it with some, fall colors and some pumpkins and things. Christmas will be Christmas. Then we come around to Valentine's Day, lots of red, St. Patrick's Day, lots of green, so on and so forth. So it's a Christmas tree, but it's also a multi-purpose holiday tree. So yeah, all that kind of stuff. I appreciate everybody in the chat saying that you guys enjoyed this. Oh, thank you, Taylor. Great show as usual. Everybody was saying they enjoyed tonight. I really appreciate you guys so much, so much. It really is every episode, Liam. Everybody's always got questions about the tree. I feel like I should just put a banner up on top as a disclaimer of why the tree is there. Because someone eventually is always like, is that a tree? And I'm like, yeah, here's why. Oh, thanks, Tommy. I appreciate that. Awesome comment from Griff. Wednesday, Loki. Thursday, Disguise Coverage. Friday, Board Game Club. It's officially part of my weekly schedule. That's awesome, man. I appreciate that so much. I love that I am in the same scheduling concept as Loki, which is a phenomenal show. Nobody's saying anything about it because I haven't watched yesterday's episode yet, but I love that I am in your regular routine along with something as awesome as Loki. And Friday, Board Game Club, which is pretty sweet. That's awesome. I appreciate you. I appreciate you for that, Griff. Thank you very much. And put a sticker above it that says I'm an Xmas nerd. Oh, I might do that. That'd be funny. Yeah, it's always there. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you very much. Again, rate and review and subscribe to Disguise Coverage and to Cover One. Please leave a like for the video. Check out the Cover One fantasy show that Greg Thompson, myself, and Rich Haynes will be doing on Monday going forward for the rest of the summer. Give that a check out. Check out Underdog Fantasy. Again, sign up and use that promo code Cover1. You'll get the free $25 credit from them. We're extremely excited about that partnership and about that sponsorship. And as always, I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and all staying safe. Be kind to one another. I greatly appreciate your support and your engagement more than you will ever know. I will not see you next week because I am out of town starting midweek, but I'll be back the following week stronger than ever. So see you in 2 weeks. No show next week. 2 weeks from now. I appreciate you guys as always. Stay safe and go Bills.